All right, welcome everybody. Welcome back to Quizzing in America. My name is Jeremy. I am your host, and today I am joined by somebody I'm very excited to talk to. In fact, this is a trivia podcast, and I believe there is an unwritten rule. It might even be written somewhere that if you have a trivia podcast, you cannot actually have a trivia podcast until this person has been on the show. This is one of the most creative and inventive minds in the trivia business, somebody I've known now for almost a decade, I think. I'm talking about the one, the only Jay Borsom from Liquid Courage Entertainment, which is right here in the Chicagoland area. Welcome, Jay. Thank you for coming on and doing this. I hope you're doing well, and say hi to folks.
Hi to folks. You've set me up for so much failure in this episode already. You know that, right, Jeremy?
Listen, I think I am one of your biggest fans, and I think that you do not appreciate how just awesome of a trivia writer, a content creator. I mean, I think that there are few people in this industry that care more about the content that they put out and put more effort into what they do than you do. And I think that you are very creative and you're always trying new and different things. And some of it's awesome. I'm sure some of it doesn't work as great. And we'll talk
That's
about
true, yeah.
some things you've done that maybe you're like, I tried it, it didn't work. And some things you've done, we'll get to like your garden path questions, which I think is one of the more creative ways to ask a trivia question. You'll ask me some trivia questions at some point. But I want to talk about, obviously, your background in trivia.
Sure.
You have a company called Liquid Courage Entertainment, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you started out more as a DJ and then karaoke company and then transitioned into trivia. And when did you start doing that? And what made you say, oh, were you just looking for additional revenue streams? Did you have a client that said, hey, we love your karaoke, we love your DJing, but we want trivia? Or am I totally off base and I don't know what I'm talking about?
You are pretty much exactly on the head on that one. So the official story of Liquid Courage is actually the fun story because back in about August of 2003, a couple friends and I had gone to a local karaoke show, and it was 1 a.m. and we weren't the most sober people in the world, so we did what anybody would do. We went to Denny's and we sat there for an hour and a half, and at some point, one of us brought up the idea that, hey, we can do this. Karaoke seems fun. We're musically inclined. We're talented. We're entertaining. And from there, Liquid Courage was born. The reason Liquid Courage is spelled with a K is twofold. One, for like search engine optimization, and two, because it represents the karaoke that we were starting off with.
I always kind of wondered if there was a deeper reason for the K, and that actually makes sense. Okay, so you're doing karaoke, and then at what point did you start doing trivia, and how did that come about?
All right, so in about 2009, we had picked up a couple local, like TGI Fridays establishments for karaoke, and I happened to know one of the general managers in one of the locations from a job that I had had like 10 years earlier, and we were just having kind of an off-the-cuff chat, and he said, we're considering bringing in trivia. It's starting to get a little more popular in the area. Do you know a good trivia company? And I jumped on and said, oh, I'm a good trivia company. Why don't you bring us in? I'll give you a discount across the board. I had never done trivia before professionally, and it first few weeks did not go great. I ultimately retooled the entire format, but that was the impetus. And to his credit, he gave us a chance to find our legs. So we have pivoted at this point since the pandemic to pretty exclusively running trivia and trivia adjacent content. I've hosted, I think, 3 karaoke events in the last 5 years.
Okay, so karaoke is now if it comes up, we'll do it, but it's not
Sure.
the main thing. It's now trivia. So I'm so curious because when I first met you, I came out because since I started doing trivia, I've always loved to go out and see other people do trivia and see other people host.
Oh, of
And the
course.
first time I met you, and just see what they do and see how they do it. And, sometimes I say, oh, that worked great. Maybe I'll incorporate it into my game in some way, or I'll go, oh, boy, I love that question, but I would have written it this way. And then I'll rework it and ask it in my game. But so I came out to one of your venues. It was a Monday night, and I found out about you guys, or about your company, about Liquid Courage, from the Triviality guys, another
Oh, yeah.
podcast.
Fantastic guys.
Yeah, good guys, and they're big fans of yours in particular and Liquid Courage. And so I go out to play this game, and your game was, so I had Noah Tarnow is the episode that's out currently this week. I interviewed him about a month ago, and he runs the big quiz thing, and his game is the closest trivia game you'll get to being on like a live game show that I've ever seen, right?
Sure, yeah.
It's just got all the bells and whistles. But when I came out and I played Liquid Courage, you had something, you had like this thing, it was called the Scrooby, and there were three different things that you had. One was the Scrooby,
Yep.
one was what were the other two?
There was also the freebie, just a regular freebie, and
Okay.
then the you and me bee.
Oh, the you and me bee. That's what I,
Hmm.
yeah.
You're taking me
That was,
back. I haven't touched those ideas in several years, but yeah, we were running
but so,
those. And it would get more complicated as I would add in bonus prizes with dumb ideas. We were doing like 2x4s and freebie shields and all of that kind of stuff at some point. I was essentially making it its own game with its own
yeah,
rules on top of a trivia mechanic. And
it, it, it was
I,
so,
it
it
was
was kind of
almost too
wild and
much. Yeah.
fun. Well, yes, it was too much in that if you want to expand and grow,
Mhm.
running that type of game takes your personality, right? And
It
you can't
unfortunately
just
very
send,
much does. Yeah.
yeah, you can't send anybody out to run a game with all those bells and whistles unless they're as into those bells and whistles as you. And you sold it. Like it was fun. It was great. I think if I remember correctly, I got like different colored poker chips that I got
Yep.
to use for each. I mean, there was so much wild stuff and it was so much fun. And so everything was so great. But when you first started then at that like TGI Fridays or
Mhm.
wherever it was, so what was your initial game? Like, how did you decide what format you were going to use? Did you go question song format? Were you like five
Mhm.
questions in a round and you're going to hand in them all and I'm going to grade them? Like, where did you get your first taste? Did you Google online trivia companies to find out a format? Like, what was the genesis of that?
So the original Genesis was a very terrible take on Jeopardy that didn't work well at all in venues because we were only inviting 3 people up at a time and there's 50 people in the bar. We scrapped that immediately and then moved to a more traditional pub quiz format. And I didn't do a ton of research in advance. However, I did have some passing familiarity with how pub trivia was being done locally. So me being the overworker that I am, we were running 80 questions a night plus a game show as the second half. This was a 4 hour event we were doing. 8 rounds, general knowledge, like question one was always history, question two was always sports, question seven or so was always music. We would have a miscellaneous, there was a tiebreaker for every round. And we would just hand out slips of paper, and it was, what we would call behind the scenes a 10Q 10A format, where you present 10 questions and then get a sheet back with all 10 answers, and then you have to grade while you're presenting. So it turns out that that sucks for a lot of reasons. One, it's 80 questions a week for one game, which is a ridiculous amount of writing to do. The questions weren't that good back then. I was finding my legs. And then two, there were things that I thought would improve the format that I wanted to bring in. This is when I actually did a little market research. I went to a location in the suburbs that I believe at the time was running Team Trivia Illinois, and I
Sure.
sat down and played a game of theirs. And I don't want to like crap on anybody. That's not what I'm here for. But there were plenty of things that I experienced at that format that kind of turned me off a lot. And being the mind that I am, my question immediately is, well, how would I do this both better and in my own style? And one of the things I really disliked was the microphone situation there was terrible. It was really, really hard to understand the questions. At this point, it was 2009. Every venue in the world had flat screens at that stage. So I asked myself, well, why don't we just put the questions on screen?
Yeah.
I hated not knowing like the scores at any given point. I wanted that transparency. So I thought about, hey, why don't we show the leaderboard like literally all the time and just make it a quick peek and then move on? I hated that I could tell for a fact that people were running to the bathroom and Googling answers and coming back during the 3 or 4 minutes you had to submit an answer to each question. So I'm like, why don't we just do short timers? Get it down to like a minute. Did 5 rounds of that, actually developed my own software platform to make all of this simpler, handle my grading kind of automatically, incorporated like a wireless keyboard so I could literally walk around the room instead of people getting up to hand me answers. And we incorporated whiteboards as well, so I didn't have to walk that far. I could see them kind of from a distance.
In fact, the first game I played, I remember I had a whiteboard and you were walking around with that where, and it was like kind of crazy because you were doing so much and you were still, and by the way,
Oh, I used to be
team trivia.
skinnier
I
back
want
then because I'd walk a room 50
yeah,
times a night.
get those steps in. And you know, you mentioned team trivia. So team trivia is one of the oldest, maybe the oldest trivia company in North America. They've
Mhm.
been around since the late 80s. They started in Atlanta. I've
Right.
actually reached out to the guy that runs team trivia currently to try and get him on an episode of Quizzing in America. I think his name's Griff.
Sure.
And I don't know much about him, but I've been aware of the company. I've played the company's games. And when I first started doing trivia, I was a lot more judgmental about different trivia formats. And I would say, you know, like you said, you don't want to crap on anybody. I probably unfairly crapped on because team trivia developed a format that is probably one of the easiest formats to
Mhm.
implement into a bar trivia game and make grow, right? So if you
Yeah, they've
want to
essentially
become
invented
big,
the default format for pub trivia in the
yeah,
US, I'd
yeah.
say.
I would say the majority of trivia companies now are some sort of copycat of the team
Mhm.
trivia format because it actually does work really well,
Sure.
especially if you have large venues and you have a lot of venues and you have a large number of hosts, and it's just an easy game to kind of walk through, teach people, have people host.
Mhm.
Whereas a game like you run, and when I started, I was very much the same. I was like,
Mhm.
I want to do more questions. I want to do, you know, so I did 6 rounds of
Okay.
12 questions each. And
Damn.
then
Okay.
I had, yeah, so 6 rounds, 12 questions each. So they were 72. Now, one of them was a picture round, so it was just 12 pictures, right?
Okay.
But
Yeah.
so I was still writing 60 questions, 5 rounds, 12 questions each. I'm writing 60 questions.
And
I
then
have
coming up
12
with the
pictures
picture
in there.
round. Yeah.
And yeah, coming up with a picture round. And then I would have a final wager question at the end as well. And then I went to a game where they had this thing called the lightning round. And I was like, it was like one question with up to 10 answers.
Okay.
And I was like, well, I like that, but 10 answers, why not do 30 answers? And so I would have one question with up to 30 answers. And
Oh,
like,
you
so
suffer from the same problem I do, where the answer is more,
yes,
better, faster, higher. Yeah.
yes, and this is part of the reason I like you as much as I do is because I look at how you do trivia and I go, "Oh, that's me. Jay
Mhm.
is me. I'm the same like I mean
Yeah, a
like
lot of
we're
parallels
so
from what we've
alike,
talked about.
you know, and also I see like whenever I made a mistake in a question or I wrote a bad question, it and I did, and
Mhm.
everybody
Sure.
does. You can't write perfect trivia all the time. You're always going to miss something here and there, you
Mhm.
know, something happens. But like I feel like I was more devastated and embarrassed than like anybody, right? And then I see when
Oh
you
yeah.
make a mistake and you beat yourself up just as much or more than I do, right? So it's like
Mhm.
I see so much of me in you, like
Oh,
basically,
there are
or
so
you
many
in me,
reasons
right?
why I'm in the wrong industry, Jeremy, and they're all mental health
Well,
related.
yeah,
Grew up gifted, so a lot of pressure was put on me. I only like got attention when I excelled at things, so I assumed I had to be perfect at everything. I have ADHD, which leads to things like rejection sensitive dysphoria. I'm a little fish in a big pond, so I suffer a lot from imposter syndrome. So honestly, I do, like you said, take those misses 100% on the chin. I'm
yeah.
working aggressively to get better at that, though.
Well, and I know that, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is, you know, I want you to know this and I want people to know this. Like your trivia is fantastic. Like, and I think you hit it out of the park way up more often than
Mhm.
you come up short, right? And I'm learning this as well. You know, like I think I'm pretty good at it as well. Not to toot my own horn,
Sure.
but I will a little bit, right? And it takes a lot sometimes, like being in this industry, you have to sometimes be a shameless self promoter.
You very
And
much do, and I'm very uncomfortable doing that.
and I am as well. And it's hard for people like us, and I suffer from a lot of the same things that you do. You know, I was also I was always in the gifted
Sure,
programs
sure.
growing up, but I couldn't sit still in class, and I was a
Hmm.
horrible student, and I got in trouble for not paying attention, and because I was a little bit older where they weren't saying ADHD as much, although I think I think you're about 5 years younger than me. Are
Yeah, we're
you're
kind
in
of in
your
the same
40s now,
ballpark.
right?
It
Yeah.
was, yep, mid 40s.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
ADD that I was diagnosed with and
Yeah.
not medicated for, but that's a different story for a different therapist.
Yeah. Well, and I'm 50, right? And
Mhm.
I think like they mentioned it as a possibility for me. And if you looked at all my report cards growing up, you would say, oh, this is a kid that had ADHD. But
Oh yeah,
again, not diagnosed, never medicated for it. And your mind just wanders, right? And I think
it
that's
does
part
so
of the
very
reason
much.
we're I think that's part of the reason we're actually good at this, right? Is because
Mhm.
our mind works in ways that most people's minds don't work. And so we
Yeah,
see
we
things, find interesting ways to maybe ask about them and talk about them. And I think it makes the games fun.
yeah, we kind of
And I
figure out
think
a way to weaponize our neurodivergence.
yes, yeah, yeah. And this is one industry where I think that can be kind of an asset if you learn to use it right.
Mm,
Now, of course, it's an industry, right? So it's a business. And like any business, there is the logistics of running a business and the pen and paper, bookkeeping and stuff like
hmm.
that. And I don't know how you are at that, but
Oh,
I
I'm
know that
terrible.
I'm okay. So I know I'm horrible at that, right? And so I would just assume with as alike as we are, that that's part of the reason that I think as quality a product as both I put out and you've put out over
Mhm.
the years, that we haven't grown in the same way that you look at some other companies who are like, I don't like their trivia as much as my trivia or this trivia or Jay's trivia, but they're in 50 or 60 bars and we're
Yeah,
in
they have a
5 10
product that
bars, right?
works.
Yes, yeah, yeah. And not only a product that works, but they have somebody who's marketing and running the business side that is more adept at doing that, right?
Hmm.
Like
I've
it
had a
and
very
which is
similar conversation about this with Nick Groves over at District Trivia, City Trivia,
yes, and
whatever name they're operating under these days. And the distinction between him and me that we both agree on is that he operates his company like a businessman,
yeah,
top to bottom, tip to tail, and the success is there for that. I've never wanted to have that view of what I do. So the term we figured out for me is artisan, artisanal trivia.
yeah. But you know what? That doesn't sometimes bring in the same money that you would
No,
like to, but
terribly
yeah,
doesn't, I assure you.
yeah. But I will say this, if you hire Jay to run a trivia event for you,
Please.
you're getting a unique, one of a kind trivia event. You're going to get content that's going to be targeted to your audience. It's going to be
Hmm.
fun. It's going to be unique. It's going to be different. So, you're always constantly trying new things. And then the other thing is, of course, we're doing trivia when the pandemic hits,
Hmm. Yeah,
everything shuts down and we got to go to virtual stuff. And I was one of the first guys to really get out there and start doing virtual. I was doing virtual
you were.
stuff
Yeah. We talked
every
really
day,
early in.
but the thing was, and I'm still like, so you have a lot more technical know-how. You're much more familiar with spreadsheets and building things and stuff. And I'm horrible at that. I don't know anything. Just for me to figure out like Google Forms was like
Hmm.
a 3 hour ordeal of somebody teaching me and me like, do I do this? What if I click here? And I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
Whereas you kind of were much more adept at that. And then on top of that, and I talked about this with Noah too, because Noah had built this whole scoring system and he was very generous with other people. But you didn't just look out for you. You were looking out
No.
for, and you said this a lot of times, and it's so true. A
A
rising
rising
tide
tide lifts all boats.
lifts all boats, right? And you live that. Like you try and help not just yourself, but pretty much everybody in the industry. You've created what I think a Discord channel for trivia writers,
Hmm.
like a trivia writers co-op. In the early days of the pandemic, you helped me out, I know, with some score sheet issues where I couldn't figure some things out. And I know you helped out a bunch of other people.
Yeah, I think it was about
So
24 different hosting companies in that first 6 months I was building what have been referred to as Liquid Courage Magic Spreadsheets or LKMS. There are
yeah,
companies like Orange Cat Trivia, Aaron Barkley still uses them to this day.
yeah, yeah. And so one, I just think like kudos to you for doing that. It was, a great help to so many people. And, I don't know. You're always so generous with your time and your effort. And so now you're running things. And so out of the pandemic, you've come back, you're doing live stuff, but now you pretty much run things. You're no longer a pen and paper game at all, right? You don't ever do pen
No,
and
and we
paper.
weren't
It's
really ever a pen and paper game after like
well that
2009. But yeah, no, everything is very digital. Everything is very online these days. Sometimes I write custom software to present things. Sometimes I, cobble 4 or 5 things together and do all the manual back end work to make them talk to each other. But the catchphrase or the tagline for my company is innovative, interactive, intoxicating. And I try to live all three of those sincerely, especially the innovation.
okay. And so so that's right. You were doing whiteboards back when I first
Mhm.
saw you. So you weren't pen and paper even then, though
No,
it
because
was, you
pen
were
and
still
paper is
writing down.
expensive. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but it
Whiteboards,
wasn't.
reusable.
Nobody was using a device to answer things, right?
Sure, sure.
Now you're answering. You use not Triviamatic. What do you use, or do you use Triviamatic?
No, I use Triv Now, which the
Triv now.
developer was just in a beautiful kind of serendipity, had talked to me a month before the pandemic started about being essentially like a QA tester or idea person for concept that they were rolling out. I found out from them through Corey Marcoux, Third Degree Entertainment in the Trivia Writers Co-op. Sal, the developer of Triv Now, reached out to Corey, and Corey said, well, I can certainly help you with some things, but I know a person who could probably talk your ear off about what kind of features this app should have and technologically how it should work. So I'm going to give you their phone number. And I told them flat out, I built my own software 10 years ago. I don't need a platform. I don't need a solution, but I'm happy to help you figure out yours. And then the pandemic hit. And you know what my software didn't do? Anything online.
Oh, okay.
So I reached out again and said, hey, I'm kind of in a pickle here. Can you help me out? 2 weeks later, I had a platform.
Okay. That's fantastic. And you're still using it now. Do other trivia hosts that you know use it as well?
Yeah, there's a fair number of hosts that use it. I know a couple hosts down in Louisville, Kentucky do Trivia Nerd, Hindsight Trivia. It's possible that there are a few more, but I'm blanking on them. Yeah, actually, a
Okay.
fair number of people in the Trivia Writers Co-op still use it.
Very nice. Yeah, I think I've only actually no, I've used it once. I used it for an event
Oh, nice.
last year, and it worked out real well because I had an event and it was like a tech conference,
Hmm.
and they wanted people to be able to play individually, and they said there's going to be hundreds of people at this conference, and they all had to be able to play. And to compile scores like that, I just couldn't do it with a pen
Oh,
and
God,
paper.
no.
I'm a traditional pen and paper guy,
Sure.
but I was like, okay, I need something, and I was able to figure it was a very user friendly app.
It
I was
really
able to put in
was.
my own questions, and so it was great.
The
Um,
developer's been really responsive to my weird ass needs over the years. The app has functionality for freebies. That's my fault. I begged them, I begged them, I begged them. Round-based wagers were also my fault because that's what the poker chips were for, was setting a value for the round based on what the category was. I needed a way to quickly and easily differentiate who had wagered what. So we used 5 different color poker chips and they were all labeled the same as a team board number. And I used basically just like an ID number for every team as I went. So he incorporated that, pulled my butt out of the fire because I wanted to replicate so much of my original game. And I knew there was limitations. For instance, we have lost the Scrooby, we have lost the You and Me Bee. They could, in theory, be brought back, but they're not scalable well.
Sure.
And
And just so people know when we're talking about that, the Scrooby, and correct me if I'm wrong, you got to take one question. If you didn't know the answer, you could take some other teams. You could like trade answers, or you could take some other team. Well, how did it work exactly?
essentially, you would get it right, and then you'd pick a team that got it right, and they would lose credit for that question.
Okay,
And
yeah.
it was
Which I know.
offset by the other
Oh, go
idea, the
ahead.
You and Me Bee, where you would get it right, but you'd also have to give credit to an opponent.
Yeah. And so I know there are some trivia purists out there that won't like that, but I thought it was such a fun gameplay aspect to bar trivia, and it made it more interactive in a
Mhm.
way, and it made teams kind of like form rivalries or alliances, and I
That's
just
very
thought it
true.
was,
Yeah.
yeah, it was like, okay, we won't screw you guys if you don't screw us, and then we get one right and we got to share. We're sharing with you,
Hmm.
and you know,
And I
but
mean, the
like
reason
I
behind them was probably threefold. One, because I can't not stand out in a crowd with ideas. Two, I wanted there to be some compression on the scoreboard, and it's a way to bring less performing players up, and your power hitters down to kind of a more ballpark average. And then thirdly, like I'm trying to remember what it was that was third. Oh, it's not a quiz. It's a game. And
yeah,
games have strategy.
yeah,
And a standard pub quiz stripped down to its bare bones is literally just a test.
yeah,
And I didn't find a
absolutely.
lot of entertainment value in that. So I made a game. I gave you strategic options for both yourself and to play against a given room. I'm always a big fan of that. I want you to have to think not just about the answer, but how you're going to approach the play of the game.
Well, and I think what it did for me anyway is it made your game really stand out and be unique, and also it was fun. Hey, oh, excuse me. Sorry.
Hmm.
We'll edit that out hopefully. But no, but it added an element of fun and just like I don't know. You're right. It made it more of a game than a quiz. And I love a good quiz, but I also love a good game. And
Sure.
speaking of games versus quizzes, you've also started running games like Lingo and Sheep, and you've of course got the podcast for Bodom, which works a
Mhm.
little bit like Password. I know I've been on it, but it's like Password, correct? Or
Yeah, password meets
yeah,
taboo meets memory is
yeah.
probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah, so you're always dipping your toes and dipping your, hand, like you got just so many wicks in the fire
Yeah.
and doing so many different things.
And the thing
I'm
is, I
not sure how you
really
keep.
like writing trivia, but what I love to do, my passion is to come up with concepts
Yeah,
and throw spaghetti at the wall and figure out how could I take this idea that I kind of like and combine it with this other thing that has aspects that I like and kind of Frankenstein them together into my own thing. Another one of my mantras is the good borrow, the great steal. And I am
okay.
definitely guilty of stealing good ideas and putting my own spin on them so that they're really not the same, but they are inspired by.
100%. And I think that's what, trying to remember what the song was or who said it. But you always hear in pop music like this song took the riff from this song and blah blah
Mhm.
blah. And
Like sampled it
like
or
yeah, I sampled it, or even just the lyric. The chords are very similar. And somebody said, I think it might have been Ed Sheeran. It was somebody relatively recently was commenting on that they got accused of stealing, or somebody got accused of stealing somebody else's song.
sure.
And I'm trying to remember who it was. It was a big deal.
There's
And the
there's been a
person
couple
whose
of those
song was,
instances.
yeah, the person whose song was allegedly stolen said, no, they didn't steal it. Like I took it from this person and they took it from me and they put their own spin on it, right? And that's what
Right.
you do is art imitates art, but great art doesn't just imitate art, is it takes it and it makes it its own,
And kind of
right? And
pushes a
you
boundary.
kind
Yeah.
of yeah, and you come up with something different and something new and something fun. And I think you've done that time and time again. Now, when you do that, you're of course you're gonna swing and miss. So
Oh,
I want you,
absolutely.
and I'm gonna throw this out there. Do you remember what is like your most notable or most memorable swing and miss when you said, I'm gonna do this, and then you did it and you're like, ooh, that didn't work.
Other than, the stuff we've already talked about with format changes and everything, the one that sticks out to me was a concept I tried to develop online about 4 years ago. It was the idea of taking questions that have like a ranked set of answers. For instance, the top 10 countries in the world by population or whatever, and having teams submit as many answers as they like, only earning points for right ones, but losing points for wrong guesses. But the gimmick was every round we would take one of the top 10 slots and reverse it to where if you gave that answer, you would actually lose points. And I called it Rankwilizer. And I
Ooh,
beta tested it once using Google Sheets, and the sheets were not programmed correctly, and people were very confused about how the game worked. I had a
sure.
terrible time like trying to explain the thought process in my head out loud in words. I have not gone back to it since, although I do think there is still promise in the concept. I need a dedicated programming team.
Yeah, no, yeah, but that's one of those things, right? Sometimes if you make something too complex, you take away the fun, and people are just like, "Oh, you've given me a headache just thinking about it, and now I don't even know what I'm going to
Right,
answer."
right.
But you've also you've hit pay dirt way more than you haven't. And one of my favorite things that you've done, and I'm not even great at these types of questions. I've heard
Mhm.
you ask them before. I don't know if this is now your final question at all your games, but the garden path question.
Oh, the
Panic's garden path question is, and how you came up with that concept. Because I think that's one of the most novel types of trivia questions I've ever seen. And I've never seen anybody but you do it. So is that something you came up with, or did you see something and go, I like it. Let me tweak it. And it turned into the garden path.
I mean, not to toot my own horn, but that is a Jay original idea right there. It was brought about because about 6 months into the pandemic, I was pulling some pretty powerhouse teams for my online games, and the feedback was starting to be, I don't think that a like wager style final question where you can bet all or none of your points, a la Final Jeopardy, scales well with 20 or 30 teams. So I listened to that feedback and I tried to figure out some different kind of final question structure that would differentiate teams better. So it was an opportunity for your top teams to showcase, how much they know, but also I wanted there to be some risk involved. So the idea eventually became, what if it's not one question, but it's five? And then what if you can't progress comfortably until you know for sure that you got the previous answer. And how do you do that with technical limitations when you don't have the option to like eliminate teams from being able to answer? That came to Triv Now later. I'd already designed the garden path at that point. So the password to each future question essentially was the answer to the previous one. So I would write a simple like phrasey question, a Jeopardy phrased style question, and have it answer. And let's say the answer was like Idaho. You move on to the second step, and the question is, what would you call a red version of the thing that's the namesake for the state nickname of the previous answer? So if you don't know we're talking about Idaho in step one, you have no idea what I'm looking for in step two. If you do, though, you slot that in, and then it reads like a normal question. You give that answer slots into the next step, and so on and so forth. So the way that I score it, and other people who have adopted the format do it their own way, was 10 points for every correct step. Because of the way TrivNow worked at the time, it was a pain in the ass to try to grade under the original view, so I tweaked it. You gave one and only one answer. And if it fit any of the 5 correct answers, you earned an escalating number of points from 10 to 50 based on how far down you got. However, if you gave a wrong answer, you earned nothing. And that's where the riskiness came in. Like the question becomes, okay, we know 10, we know 20, we know 30, we think we know 40, but we're not sure. So do you risk the 30 you have to try to earn 10 more, or do you stand pat?
And then do you take the 40 and go, okay, well, if we're right on 40, then maybe this is 50 and go for
Maybe
the 50.
we take a swing, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the
so
reason it's called the
depends on-
garden path, actually, is because like a hedge maze, it is really, really easy to take one misstep and end up in a very different place than you're supposed to. You fall off the garden path.
Yeah. And it's an easy concept to understand once you've played it.
Yeah,
but
the
it's
first one's
hard to
always the
understand.
hardest.
The first one, because I remember the first time I saw you do this, I'm like, what is Jay doing? Like, I don't, and I had no clue what I was talking about. And then I saw it again, and I was, well, after you did the first one and I saw the answer, I was like, oh, I get it. Boy, that's really clever. And then I played a couple of your games since where I've been able, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I've ever gotten to the 50. I think I've gotten to 40.
The 50 is
once.
designed to be very, very tough.
Yeah.
My live teams rarely, if ever, get to 50, but it does happen from time to time. And we collectively kind of celebrate that.
Yeah, no, it's and the other nice thing about that type of question is they're almost cheat proof, right? They're not totally cheat proof because obviously there's always going to be somebody who figures out a way to do something right. But there's so much involved in, okay, I got to answer this one, then plop it into this one. And it's like,
you can't Google the high value answer. It's impossible because you're missing the most important word.
Yeah. And so it's like, okay, you have to Google the first one, then you have to go back and Google the second. And it's like the amount of time that it would take you is just like, you don't have that much time. You'd have to have a team of people cheating cooperatively.
And yeah, it's really easy to tell when people are operating that way with the period of time that I give them and the fact that I don't have anything to do for that time except walk around.
Sure. So, all right. Well, so nowadays your game generally consists of what, like 5 rounds of 10 questions or 6 rounds of 10 questions?
Yeah, what I call the classic format, because it's the one that I brought into the pandemic, is 5 rounds, 10 questions each, plus a final question that's either a wager style question in some locations or a garden path in others. There was some feedback from venues about which they preferred, so I end up doing both. And now that there's a new version of the TrivNow platform releasing like officially in a week, I've been playing around with it, and it gives me a lot. I love something that gives me toys to play with and break. Now there's a lot more optionality to that. I've started incorporating like a 5-minute halftime round.
Okay.
Because why not work harder?
Sure. Well, and is this like, so the first time I saw you live when you were using the whiteboards, there was a halftime round where we all went up. Like, well, every team, I think, sent one member.
Yeah, it's been a while. I almost forgot that existed. When you would have seen me, I would have been doing 2 different break time questions. One was a variation on closest to the pin. I had seen an episode of the show Brain Games like weeks before I developed this, and I thought it was really interesting that if you ask somebody on the street to give a range where they think a correct answer is, they will always kind of psychologically make that range smaller than you need it to be. So I took that idea and went, Well, let's screw over my players and make them do the same thing. So it was a question with a numeric answer, and all you had to do is set a low end and a high end. And if the answer fell between those, you were good. However, only the team with the smallest correct range would get the bonus.
Oh, I
Yeah.
do remember that. Yeah.
Yep.
That was very interesting. Yeah, that's almost like a Price is Right game worked into a trivia night. I forgot about. I like that. I may use that at. I mean, that'd be a fun thing to just whip out at like a one-off event,
Oh,
like as like a
exactly.
break in between, right? Like
Yeah,
that's
I'm
that's
making a
a
note right now to tell the developer of TrivNow that he's about to work on number style questions, that I want
yeah,
this back.
yeah. No, that was fun. So, what is your break game now?
It actually varies now because I have a couple different options. I've done image rounds before. This week I'm trying to remember, it was just a quick hit thematic round, where every answer was a name or a phrase or something, a well-known proper noun or name that had the initials LK,
Okay.
because of course it did. I've done, and I borrowed this from a friend in the co-op recently, a picture round where I give you an empty set of a TV series and you just name the TV series. I've done ranking style questions. I've done like hit or miss select all the options that apply style questions. I've done matching questions. All of those features are built into the platform, which is really nice. So at this point, I'm just playing again in a way I haven't been able to play creatively in a long, long time because I haven't been able to build the tools to do what I want to do, and somebody else is willing to do it.
All right. Now, I hope the LK round had Lisa Kudrow in there just because she's my favorite LK. I mean, but I
It
don't know.
actually didn't, because I had used
Oh,
Lisa Kudrow for a podcast recording a couple months sooner.
okay.
There also
Fair
wasn't
enough.
Lenny Kravitz in it for the same reason. I'm trying to remember what the other two were, but I was doing an episode of Frenemy Trivia, and it was for a bunch of people who knew me really well. So I themed the hot seat round entirely. Everybody got a
Okay.
question where the answer's initials were LK. Everybody got a question where the answer was a character name in Bluey. Every shoe references in there, the whole nine.
Sure. Absolutely. Probably some crappy baseball team reference. I don't know. Maybe a Deadpool reference. When
Yeah,
I say crappy
surprisingly enough,
baseball
neither
team,
of those, but yeah.
oh, okay. When I say crappy baseball team, Jay is unfortunately not very bright when it comes to rooting for baseball teams and
I'm
has this cub
wounded, sir.
affliction. No, oh, sorry. I apologize. I didn't
What?
mean to say that out
What
loud.
do you?
No,
What do you?
go
You're a Red
Cardinals.
Sox fan, is that right?
Well, red is right.
Oh,
Sox,
that's
no.
right. You're from the terrible team. I forgot for a moment.
Red birds.
Mm.
You're in Cardinals corner now. So hottest team in baseball the last couple of
How,
weeks.
as a Chicagoan, do you root for the Cardinals and sleep at night?
Good taste and intelligence. Good taste and intelligence, my friend.
I can
So
sleep well after 2016. The irony is, I have the worst sleep issues I've ever had going these days.
uh, so now one thing you did recently, which people will get to see you on, correct me if I'm wrong, is
Hmm.
you got to go to the Alex Trebek stage, and we don't want spoilers.
No, no,
But
no spoilers.
we're looking to celebrate, I believe, Independence Day with a little Jay Borsom on Jeopardy.
Oh, it's not even that far in the future. This
Oh,
episode, I
really?
think, is going to come out like June 2nd, you said?
Yeah.
I appear on TV June 4th.
Oh, wow. So if you're listening to this the day it comes out, you've got a couple of days
Yep,
to
that
set your
Wednesday.
DVRs to record Jay on Jeopardy. And then, even more exciting is, I believe that while you're in the midst of your Jeopardy run, I'll just assume, I don't know, I have no knowledge.
Of
I
course,
have
can't
no
confirm or
knowledge of
deny.
how long it is. I'm just assuming it's going to be a nice long run. I'm hoping for it anyway. But that's Saturday. Is it that Saturday that
It
you are
is, yeah.
going to do something? You are attempting to break or set a Guinness World Record for the longest continuously run trivia event. It's going to go how many hours?
The goal is 36 hours because the record is currently just over 34 and a half.
Okay. So 36 hours, and that is going to happen at Critical Grind.
It sure is. Critical Grind Board Game Cafe down in Shorewood, Illinois, for those of you in the Chicago area. I'm
Okay.
also planning and hoping to simulcast the entire thing on Twitch with proceeds that come in online benefiting Trans Lifeline. Proceeds for people who buy tickets to participate locally will be going to a local organization or a more local organization called Tabletop Gamers, which ensures that locations for like tabletop play are safe spaces for people in marginalized communities.
Okay, very good. And so what are you doing? I mean, you're going to run 36 hours of trivia. Now, are there rules for breaking the record? Like, can you repeat a question?
Oh, no, there are so many rules. And no, I cannot ever repeat a question. I must ask at least one question per minute. Rounds have to be between 10 and 20 questions long. Only 10% of my content can be multimedia, like audio or visual questions. And at all times, at least two teams of at least four players must be participating.
And they have to be participating live at the venue, or they have
Live
to be
and in
participating?
person, yeah. Because there is a
Okay.
distinct record for longest trivia stream. And I'm
Okay.
not even going to attempt that one at this one. It is 48 hours or somewhere in that ballpark.
Oh, and was that one person or was that a group of people doing 48
I
hours?
don't explicitly remember. I didn't look enough at it, but I believe it was a team project. I don't know if they had a single presenter.
And what is the rule in terms of, do you get a bathroom break every hour for 5 minutes? Or do like
Yeah,
if you have to ask a
that's
question a minute,
no,
like
that's
how do they
exactly
work?
right. Every completed hour, I am allocated 5 minutes of break time to use more or less as I see fit, with the exception that I can't like bank it all at the very end and end early.
Okay. So, but like, let's say, you start at what time are you starting? You're starting at 7 a.m., 6
No,
a.m.,
10
8
a.m.
a.m., 10 a.m. So you're starting at 10 a.m. that Saturday.
Hmm.
Let's say 10 a.m., 11 a.m. comes and you're just started. So you're going strong. You're
Oh
like,
yeah.
I don't need a break yet.
Oh God,
Can
no.
you go to can you go to like 1 p.m. and then you've banked 15 minutes and take a 15-minute
Exactly. Yeah.
break?
Or I can
Okay.
bank
All right.
15 minutes, take five of it there, and I have 10 to use later. Yeah, it's pretty
Okay.
carte
But I
blanche in
mean,
that regard. Yeah.
you can bank the 5 minutes an hour, and
Sure.
you just can't like say, oh, I'm gonna run, if you get 5 minutes an hour, then for every 20 hours, you'd have a full hour. So you
Hmm.
can't say, oh, if I wanted to go 40 hours, I'm really gonna go 38 hours without a break and then
And
stop and
then
use my two
count it.
hours of
Yeah.
break and count it as 40 hours. You
Yeah,
can't do
the
that.
the guidelines that
So
they sent me, and this has been in the works since July of last year, when I originally came up with the idea. September, I believe, is when Guinness got back to me with the guidelines, and then I had a busy winter with the trivia adventure calendar, some personal issues in the first 2 months of the year. So I knew that I wanted to do it in spring or summer of 2025. Ultimately, sat down with the owner of Critical Grind, and we agreed on a weekend in June. And that's been the deadline here for months and months and months.
well, I am looking forward to that. I got to talk to you when we're not recording. We'll figure it out. But I would love to try and be there and play the entire thing. I don't know if that, I don't know what the concept, I don't know
That
what the
would
record
be
is. There a
one
record for?
insane and really, really exciting. I don't know
Yeah,
what the
but
record is for participation. I don't know that there
yeah,
is a record for participation.
yeah.
I
Maybe I
don't
can
think they
set
want to
that while
encourage
you're
you. Yeah.
setting the record for hosting. But yeah, we'll figure out if that's a possibility or something that can be worked out somehow. Because I would love to support it. And then also, are you going to be raising funds doing? Is there like going to be like a place where people can Venmo or send funds for? Because you're doing this also. You're raising money for some good causes, I believe,
Exactly. Yeah.
while you're doing it, right?
So for online players, all we're asking, and it's a suggestion, is send a $25 donation direct or whatever you can afford or however much you feel is appropriate directly to Trans Lifeline. For a number of reasons, I don't want that money hitting my account, mostly tax reasons.
Yeah.
But then Critical Grind is selling tickets for 4 hour windows of reserved table space, essentially, for the attempt. And those tickets are $25 each. And I believe it is 20% of that goes directly to tabletop gamers, the other 80% to the cafe, which covers the above average staffing costs and things of that nature.
Sure.
I'm not taking a cent. This is
Okay.
not a fundraising venture for me, more than it
Yeah.
is, I think, the thing that I eventually hope will make me feel like I deserve to be in the position I find myself in the space.
Well, but
Like if
see,
we're going to
here's
get
the
to
thing, right?
brass tacks, that's what it is.
You absolutely deserve to be in the position you're in because, like I said, you are one of the most creative minds in trivia. You are one of the most caring minds. You're always looking out
Mhm.
for your fellow trivia writers, trivia hosts. Like I said, the mantra, and you say it all the time. a rising tide lifts all boats, right? And
Exactly.
you absolutely live by that. Through creating the Trivia Writers Co-op, through the calendar you were mentioning,
Mhm.
the Trivia Adventure. What's the official name of the
The
Trivia
Trivia
Advent?
Adventure calendar, emphasis on the
Yes.
advent.
And that has been running now for 2 years. You've raised a
Mhm.
good amount of money for different causes. I was able to participate and contribute a quiz this year. It was a lot of
You
fun.
were, it was incredible.
Yeah, it really is. And I think this year you did, it was nice. You did the adventure calendar, and then you did like as a tack on, and I was part of the tack on with the 8 crazy nights of fun. I don't
Oh,
know
the
if it had
12
official
days of
name.
Quizmas is what we called it.
Well, 12 days of Quizmas, but I did one that was run during Hanukkah, and
Oh,
mine was
right.
very Hanukkah themed.
I remember
So
that now. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
it's a good problem to have. We had more people want to contribute this year than we did last year, and we had to turn away a couple people last year. So,
yeah,
the team kind of behind the scenes, and shout out to Tim Dipple and Brittany Shaw, who came up with this idea with me and kind of fleshed it out the first year. And then we added in Mike Bober. We added in my wife Quincy and a couple other names that I'm just going to forget to mention. Chris Brewer was in there offering to be a volunteer grader and everything. We had more entries because we reached out to more people. We had built more connections. People had an idea of what was going on. And the turnout was incredible. I think in 2 years, only one writer has politely declined the invitation to send a 10-question quiz.
okay, wow,
And we
yeah, no,
received
it's
72 last year,
yeah.
or
I
60,
mean,
forgive me, 60.
it really was. It's really a nice thing that you guys came up with a couple of years. It really for a good cause
Mhm.
and a lot of good people, and you're getting a lot of different flavors and formats for trivia questions. Some are going to be to your liking. Some you're going to be like, I don't know this, but you know what? Not everything is for everybody. So do
Yeah,
what
not
you
every
like,
theme
and
round's going to be your theme if you go to your weekly
yeah,
show.
yeah, exactly. So you've got Jeopardy, you've got the world record attempt coming up. You
Hmm.
obviously are streaming shows all the time. You're still doing live shows.
Yeah.
So today, like, what are your favorite types of questions that you like to kind of write? Do you have like a favorite trivia question or two that you want to throw out there?
Throw
Or?
out your way. The problem is if you're a Jack or a Jill of many trades, you don't know the answer to that question because I've written in a number of different formats for a number of different use cases. So I'm
Sure.
happy to give you kind of a smorgasbord, but I don't know that I know the answer to the question, what do I like to write most?
Okay.
With the exception probably of like gimmicky wordplay rounds. I'm a big fan of wordplay, like language knowledge, things of that nature. So a lot of the theme rounds that I do kind of center on that. I'm playing around with an idea, and I haven't written it yet, where the round would be called "Oh Say," or what was it? Yeah, "Oh Say Can You See?" But it would be "O's A Can You See?" And every answer is going to contain multiple O's, an a U, and a C in some form or fashion. How that
That
popped into my
sounds
head, I couldn't possibly tell you if you paid me.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. When you write trivia questions for a living, the way things pop into your head and how you adapt them and use them in a game, the hardest thing for a round like that is writing the round is going to be easy. But what you have to do is you have to figure out what your answers are going to
Sourcing
be
the answers,
first,
yeah.
right? You got to
And
get the answers. And once you get the list of answers, you're like, okay, now how do I turn this into a question where this is the answer? And sometimes those end up being the most fun rounds.
no, very much
And
so. You
yeah,
get a lot of aha moments and realizations. I have found some tools over the years that help find those styles of answers. There's a website called Nutramatic, where if you know a little bit of like regex, regular expression programming, it'll pull keywords from Wikipedia, like the entirety of Wikipedia, based on frequency of use and how much they conform to the requirements you're giving it.
I'm sure there are people out there that understood what you said. I am an idiot when it comes. No, I kind of get it, but to me, I'm like, yeah, I don't think I could ever use that, even though it's probably really simple and anybody could use it.
Sure.
I am so technologically just not good, which is
I did a
why, by the
round
way,
a couple of years ago as an example called Trivia A to Z. Every question had the letters A and Z adjacent to each other. So finding a full list of things that work for that, not just like dictionary words, this site made that really, really easy.
Mike Piazza.
Oh, there you
Um,
go. I
there you
think
go.
Piazza was in there, honestly, because I liked that it was in both ways.
Yeah, so I'm obviously a big baseball guy. So everything. The first thought is always, okay, what's the baseball reference I can make up? But all right, so do you have like a liquid courage, a round or two, or a game or something you can pull up and we can play? I don't know if I can just answer without using the TrivNow app, or if yeah, I do have the TrivNow app on my phone because I've played it through you. So
No,
it's up
you
to you.
absolutely don't need the app. We can do this kind of
Okay,
ad hoc.
all
So
right,
I'm going to give you just a little bit of a sample of stuff I've done in the last week or two in a couple different formats. Let's start with actually questions that even haven't even gone live yet. Another thing that I do is facilitate an online quiz league called the World Trivia Federation. I've been doing that for about
okay.
3.5 years, and almost dozens of people play it now.
Almost dozens of people. There
Almost
you go.
dozens. We're approaching like legitimate dozens. But I'm actually taking a break from writing tomorrow's set to do this interview, but I have 80% of it written, so I'll give you just one question in the style that I do the WTF. These are intended to be read by an individual person who has up to 36 hours to submit an answer. So they're
Okay,
often
so you can
chewier, they're often a
digest
little
them.
more verbose. I
Yeah.
don't necessarily expect you to be able to pop an answer off the top of your head. However, I do expect you to be able to pop an answer off the top of your head.
I at least like to talk through like
Sure.
one of the fun things for me in doing this and getting all these different types of questions to try and answer is to talk through the process in my head and how I answer the question. And I hope that people that are out there listening, maybe take something from that and go, oh, this is maybe a good way to approach a question where I don't know the answer, and how do you figure it out, right?
For sure.
So,
And I actually
yeah.
borrowed the format a little bit from Thorsten at Learn League and a little bit
Okay.
from my friend Jeff Bim, formerly of RMT Trivia, who had no shame whatsoever writing a question that had two sentences in it. It was
That's
something I
good.
had never done, and now I do it with the WTF because there's that time. So let's hit you with a technology question first. Here we go. In response to the rise in popularity of AI chatbots like ChatGPT, many major brands have begun to incorporate AI into their interfaces, like Grok on X, Q by Amazon, Copilot by Microsoft, and What Offering by Google, named for one of the 88 modern constellations.
Okay, so you're basically looking for the Google AI,
Yeah, that's the
right?
meat and bones of it. Yeah,
Okay. So, and it's named after one of the constellations. Okay. So I right away, the constellations, obviously all the signs of the zodiac are constellations,
sure,
right?
sure. Yeah.
And this is not, I'm so ignorant when it comes to AI, and people are like, oh, do you use AI to write trivia? And I don't. One, I consider it cheating, right? Like when I write questions, I want them to come from me and not
Oh,
from
of course.
some, and I'm
I
sure
mean, I
you're
use it in
similar.
my ways, and it's usually as like a copy editor or some
Yeah,
way to get inspiration for answers from a topic.
sure.
But yeah, I don't let it write for me. Writing trivia
So
is not something it's good at.
I think there's like 88 constellations or something like that. I don't know. There's some
There are,
weird
yeah,
number.
88.
Is it 88? Yeah, okay. That's the number that jumped out in my head. So obviously I can't name them all, but I know all the signs of the zodiac are constellations. And since this is Google, and I think companies like alliteration, my first instinct is to go for Google Gemini, which sounds somewhat familiar. Because that's a sign that starts with G, and Google starts with G, and Google Capricorn, and Google Aquarius, and Google Leo, and
Google
Google
Cancer is
Pisces.
problematic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, Google Cancer I would not do. But Google Gemini has a ring to it. So I'm going to
it
go with
sure
Gemini.
does. And that's why the answer is, in fact, Gemini. Well done, Jeremy.
All right, see? But that's a great example of a question that like I did not know the answer to. I'm not up on my AI, but you can go, okay, you gave me the information that it's named after one of the constellations, that it's run by Google. It's like,
Yeah,
okay,
I'm a
there's a
big fan
limited
of
number
like
of stuff I can
backdoor
answer.
ins or confirmation clues in questions.
Yeah.
So like the if you know clever element of the wording or something that can, if you look at it sideways, kind of get you in the back door on a question. Because ultimately I want teams to feel good, to earn points, but I also don't want to treat them like they're dumb. I refuse to write
Yeah.
easy questions. I write fun questions. I write simple questions. I write questions where you feel really good about a right answer or you take something away if you don't. But I refuse to insult my players' intelligences.
Well, and but and that's a tough line sometimes to draw. Like when does a question become so easy that it's almost insulting? And does that depend on that person's knowledge and background, right? Because like
Exactly. Yeah.
sometimes there's a question that is like so like okay,
Like if I
Bluey
asked
is,
you for the the famous outfielder, or I think it was outfielder for the St. Louis Cardinals, known for doing a backflip when he took the field, that's an instant answer for you.
oh, we're gonna have a problem, Jay.
What problem?
Outfielder, outfielder.
And then I
Are you
immediately said, "Oh,
talking
or is he an
about the
infielder? I don't
greatest
remember."
defensive shortstop of all time, Ozzie Smith, whose
I am.
Funko Pop I'm holding in my hand right now,
I
and
may or
whose
may not be,
framed
yeah.
autographed jersey is right behind my head? Are you
I
talking
knew
about
the
that
inspiration for
player?
that came from somewhere, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know. He
it was
ran out onto the outfield and did a
he,
backflip.
well,
And then I
he
stopped watching where he ended up.
as he was running. Well, so he was running out onto the turf as he
Mm,
was taking his position at shortstop. Sometimes he flipped it. He was in the outfield, maybe when he made the flip. Sometimes, but he's a shortstop,
okay,
and
fair
that's
enough.
okay. I love you anyway. He's the greatest shortstop ever. He's my boyhood hero. Thank you, Ozzie Smith. All right, now
But yeah,
do we
point
have any
being,
other?
that would be an insanely easy question for you.
Yes.
But in Chicago in general, where we try very, very hard not to listen to the Cardinals, probably tougher for them. So you have geographic differences, you have cultural differences, you have age differences, you have demographic differences, and you can't fully take those all into consideration. What will be somebody's impossible question will be somebody else's instigate. But I try not to write questions that I feel the majority of the room is going to have an answer in 5 seconds and then sit and wait
Yes.
to know
Yeah.
that they got their points.
Those are definitely less fun. And in fact, when you said generations, it reminded me the last time I was at one of your games, you had, and I don't know if you do this in every game, you had was it the Gen Z question of the
The
night or something like that?
shamelessly pandering to Gen Z question, because I got
Yes.
tired of my young 20-something-year-old team saying, "Hey, why do you write so much pop culture about the 80s and 90s?" Which the answer is because that's when I paid attention to pop culture. So to
Yeah.
shut them up in a funny way, I said, "Okay, well, every week I'm going to make sure I give you one." And then you can't complain anymore. Specifically for a team at my Monday night show, it's made up of a couple like 23, 24-year-old guys, and they come up with these really fun team names every week. I've decided somehow, and they let me do it, if I can stump them with the Gen Z question of the week, I get to change their team name.
Oh, nice. I like it. Yeah, I think I was there
Yeah, all upside
when
for
they
me,
were
no downside.
yeah, no, it's very fun. All right, do we have a few more questions or a round that you want to run, or maybe a
Yeah, I'll
garden path question out there or
yeah, I'll
something?
definitely give you a garden path. There's one very quick one from the World Trade Federation. It's the last question I wrote before I came down here. And there's something about it that I absolutely love. And I think it's the brevity, because the question is, what is 374F/190C for EVU?
Repeat that.
What is 374F/190C or EVU?
And what is that last word you're saying?
EVO, all caps.
That's not I don't know what EVU is. Okay. So now my question is, what is EVOO?
I will let you know this
Oh,
category is
wait,
food and
wait.
drink.
Oh, okay. Extra virgin olive oil is what
Yep.
EVOO is. Okay. So and what are the numbers again?
374F/190C.
I don't know. Let's see. There's Wesson there, 374F/190C. So 374. Trying to think of what the letters could stand for there. So extra virgin olive oil. Are they grades of olive oil? No. I mean, it's just like I have no clue. I'm not good at food and drink to
Okay,
begin with,
that's
so
fine.
I
I'll
am
nudge you just a
lost.
hair. The letters F and C are often related to each other in a certain sense, and it's often an international sense.
Okay, so now that has me thinking
Mhm.
maybe money, like some sort of currency or
Nope.
some sort of, okay, some sort of like, I don't know, French or Chinese or
We
no.
use we use the F here in the United States. Most of the world uses the
Oh,
C.
Fahrenheit and Celsius. Duh.
Yep, there it
Is
is.
this the boiling point? Oh, God. Is this like the boiling point of olive oil? Is that what it is?
Not quite. It's properly known as the smoke point.
Okay.
But yeah, I was starting to write a question about the idea of a smoke point in food and drink, and I had these little notes down that I was going to write a question about and expand upon it. And then I realized if I do this the right way, I can condense this down to basically 5 words in a league that is known for its verbosity.
Yeah.
So this is going to be one of those standout, hey, I really like what you did there questions.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like I would definitely that's a question I would 100% miss.
But you
But
have a day and
I've
a
seen
half, so
That's true. I'd see the answer and then I'd be like, oh, I don't think I would
Oh,
get there even in a day and a half. I think I'd
sure.
still miss that question. But I'd see the answer and I'd be like, oh, I get it. Fahrenheit, Celsius, and F and C really is a trivia person. If I see numbers with F and C
Right.
like that, I should probably have gotten like I should probably have figured that out. I was actually surprised I figured out extra virgin olive oil as quick as I did. But
Yeah,
like
you
I
did get
wrote down
there.
the letters.
Well-known phrase to like chefs and people on cooking shows.
Yes.
But yeah,
Yeah. So, all
let's
right.
see. What
Well,
was
very
my
good.
theme round this week?
Oh yeah, I love a
Oh
good.
yeah. Oh, you'll like this one. It is called Live Pub Trivia because every question has to do with something that has the word live in its name. Not
Okay.
live, live, L with a long
Okay.
I, which should probably get you to question number one's idea. Peaking at 78 on the Hot 100, a 1999 single by the music group Live is named for the cry of what kind of animal?
Ooh, I thought you were going to go with Lightning Crashes, and now I'm trying to remember what their other big song is. Not a lamb. The lambs cry. No, dolphins cry. Don't dolphins cry is a song. Is that live?
It is
I guess
live. Yeah,
maybe
well
that is
done.
live. Okay.
The song is called The
All right.
Dolphins Cry. Very nice.
Yeah.
Number two, what comedian whose routine was the subject of the Supreme Court case FCZ, let me repeat that, FCC v. Pacifica Foundation, was the first guest host in Saturday Night Live history?
This one I know just because I know he's the first host in
Mhm.
Saturday Night Live history. He's got the 7 words you can't say on television. He was Rufus in Bill and Ted's. He's I would love to see what he would think of the world we live in today. But that is, of
I
course,
would too,
Mr.
yeah.
George Carlin.
Absolutely was. And it's one of those fun facts about SNL that I just know and like to work in wherever I can. George
Yeah,
Carlin, quite possibly my favorite stand-up comic of all time.
I'm right there with you. One of the greats. One of the
Mhm.
greats. Yeah.
All right, number three, combining a single letter with the back half of a popular website's name, what style of streaming popularized by HoloLive uses face and voice tracking to animate an anime-style avatar in real time?
Okay. So repeat that so I know what I'm looking for. I
Sure.
heard letter and live, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
So again, combining a single letter with the back half of a popular website's name, what style of streaming popularized by HoloLive uses face and voice tracking to animate an anime-style avatar in real time? So we're
Okay.
looking
So I
for the
think the
style
letter
of
is going to
streaming.
be
Yeah.
I think the letter is going to be V for video, and I'm assuming that the popular website might be YouTube. So VTubing.
VTube is correct. I do believe the V stands for virtual, though.
Oh, all
I could
right.
be wrong. This is one that my 18-year-old
Yeah.
anime fan kid helped me write. In fact, that was the inspiration
Sure.
for the round. I asked him, hey, I need to come up with a theme for this week's game. He's like, I don't know,
Yeah.
HoloLive? I'm like, well, no, nobody knows HoloLive but you. But there's
Yeah. I
live
would
in a bunch
not
of
have
things.
known anything about HoloLive. But
Well, you knew enough to
but the
get
way
this
you
one.
wrote that,
Yeah.
right, is you said with a letter, you gave me the letter, and I'm like, okay, I think this is going to be like something to do with video, and YouTube is the video site, so
Yep.
VTubing just made sense, and I've heard that expression before.
So it
So
helps kind of bump the punch bowl. Yeah.
yeah,
Number four, within one, in which year was the service originally called Xbox Live first launched? That one's pretty simple, at least as one of my questions goes.
I mean, yeah, certainly now. So I'm such a not video gamer. Like it's got to be early 2000s. Can't be. I don't think it can be the 90s. I don't think it was around that early. The question is, how early in the 2000s do I go?
Right, right.
I'm debating somewhere between 2002 and 2010. Do I get a plus or minus, or
You
have
get
to
a
be
plus or
exact?
minus one. Yeah.
Plus or minus one. So now the question is, do I go with 2003, 2004, 2005? So do I want my range to be 2002 to 2004, 2003 to 2005, or 2004 to 2006? Because I think that's the range I'm most comfortable in.
Yeah, sure.
I think I'm going to go with 2000, and I'm not going to go with 2002 because I think 2001 sounds too early. So it's 2003 or 2004. I'm going to say 2004.
I'm so sorry to tell you that it actually did come out in 2001. It was like November 2001.
Oh, should have said 2002. All right, fair enough.
I take that back. I was reading the wrong spot in the answer. It was 2002. 2001 was the
Still,
smallest acceptable answer. 2003
yes.
would have been okay.
Still, I was still wrong because I said
But you were
2004.
very, very close.
So,
Yeah.
very close, but
You were
yes.
you were where I hate to see teams and I give them a hard time about. It's like you were as close as you could be while still being wrong.
Yeah. But you know what? I take something away from that. Like
You do.
I'm okay when I get like a most common wrong answer, or when I
Hmm.
give an answer that, like, I like to reward teams when they give me an answer that's wrong but makes total sense and works for the. I'm like, that's a wrong answer, but it's a great answer.
Yeah, I tend to
Because
call
like
those
so many
out
times, yeah.
whenever I can. It's like,
Te-
ooh, I didn't even think of that, but it's wrong, but I like it.
Yeah, no, I mean, so many times teams will just not put anything down, and it's like, no, take a stab in the dark and try and answer a question, and
Yeah, the motto
yeah,
here is if you can't be right, at least be funny.
yeah, that
And
works.
and I
All right,
love a
what's
good
our
joke
next
answer.
live question?
Next up, a British stand-up comedy program that has aired since 2004 is called Live at the What, which is actually a different venue than the one found in a similar US stand-up comedy program, even though they share the same mythical name.
Oh, well, this has to be live at the Apollo then.
It sure is. Now, I think the
Okay.
difficulty in writing that question is that I confused the two names as I was going in. I'm like, oh, Live at the Apollo, that's a well-known show in the US. No, that's Showtime at the Apollo. Live at the Apollo is a different thing in the UK, but I need the word live in here, so we'll make it about the
Yeah,
Apollo and give a backdoor in.
sure. Which is great because I was completely lost, don't know my BritCon at all. And so I would not have gotten that until you got to the US based show. I was like, okay, well,
Mm,
that's clearly Showtime at the Apollo, live at the Apollo. And you gave the mythical in as well, right? So
I did, yeah.
it's like there's ways to get an answer and then go, okay, my answer makes total sense. And that's another one where if Apollo had been wrong, which I'm glad it wasn't, but if
Mm.
Apollo had been wrong and somebody said
But
Apollo, you'd be like,
really, it's
man,
not?
that's a
Because that makes
great
so much
answer. Yeah,
sense.
like, yeah.
Next up, this is probably the shortest and sweetest of the set because I had an embarrassment of options with this one and just went for something simple. What nation was the intended beneficiary of the 1985 benefit concert Live Aid?
Live Aid. Oh, this is going to be so bad. Like, because now I'm doubting. Like, my very first instinct was Ethiopia. And I'm like, wait, no, is that not right? That's not right. And then I'm like, like, it is Ethiopia, right? Is there, so here's what USA for Africa was not just Ethiopia, it was more, and then Live Aid was specifically Ethiopia. Like, that's, and
I believe
I'm
that's
going to
right.
say,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to say Ethiopia. Yeah, I mean, Ethiopia is the answer I'm going to go with, even though I'm going to be mad if that's not actually right. But is it Ethiopia? It is Ethiopia, right?
It's definitely Ethiopia. There was
Okay.
unfortunately a major famine in the mid 1980s
Yes.
that severely impacted the nation. So a bunch of celebrities, musicians decided to
Anybody
pull
that grew
together.
up in our generations at some point, like, finish your dinner. The kids in Ethiopia are, something like
There's
that, right?
starving
Like,
people in Africa,
yeah.
yeah. Which, is its own sense of problematic, but also was true at the time.
Yes.
There's
So,
four more to go. Next up, originally named Live with Regis and Kathy Lee after changing from the morning show, the syndicated morning talk show that's been on the air since 1983 is now named for what two figures? First names only.
well, that would be Kelly and Mark. She finally found somebody that can't leave the show unless he divorces her. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
But I think Carson's been involved on that. Obviously, Michael Strahan has been somebody
Yep.
in the morning show scene lately. So I liked that the Kelly was probably the obvious one, and that you might have to stretch to remember Mark, which is why
Sure.
that's a two-answer
Absolutely.
question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Next up, in 2009, the company Live Nation merged with what other corporation originally based out of Beverly Hills?
Okay. So that's not Ticketmaster, right? What is Live Nation? Is it Ticketmaster? Are they? I don't know if Ticketmaster was based out of Beverly Hills, but when I think of Live Nation, I think of Ticketmaster. So I'm going to say Ticketmaster.
Yeah, there's a reason you think of Ticketmaster when you think Live Nation because they merged about 15 years ago.
Okay. All right. Fair
So
enough.
now
I
you can be
I
mad
don't
at two
think I
different
realized
companies for
Ticket.
price
I
gouging.
mean, Ticketmaster being based out of Beverly Hills makes sense, but I don't think if you would have asked just straight up, Ticketmaster was based out of what, I would never have come up with Beverly Hills, I don't think.
Oh, yeah, no, that was definitely something to add a few words to the question. That's all.
Yeah.
Number nine, not counting Mickey Mouse Club performers like Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, and members of NSYNC, who was the first Disney Channel star to have a music video appear regularly on MTV's Total Request Live with So Yesterday?
That's a good question. Okay, so
It's like my favorite thing to hear
I think
as
this is going to be
as a
older
writer.
than Miley Cyrus, right? Like, I don't think it's going to be Miley Cyrus. I don't think she'd be the first. So now the question is, so it's funny. So I just played a trivia night in Athens, Georgia, not so long ago.
Oh, nice.
And it was a one-off night. I'm going to have the guy that hosted it, I think, on an episode at some point.
Heck
And the
yeah.
format was they did 5 rounds, 5 questions around. Each question was successively worth one more point than the next. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Mhm.
which was fine, but it's problematic. They had like a category that was reality TV, which I'm not good at. And they asked about like 2 reality shows I'd never even heard of. And then they had an audio round, and this is where this will come into play. The
Mhm.
audio round was all songs by former Disney stars.
Oh, no
And so,
kidding.
one,
Okay.
I'm really bad at audio rounds because I'm a little deaf and I can't tell one voice from the next unless it's an
Okay.
80s hair band. But I can name you Disney stars that have had music careers, right? And the first song was a Miley Cyrus song, and everybody got that. That was the 1 point. 2, 3, 4, 5. I put Demi Lovato,
Mhm.
I put Zendaya, I put Hilary Duff, and I put Selena Gomez, right?
Okay. Yeah, I
And
almost
so I think
wrongly said Ariana Grande, but she was a Nickelodeon star, not a
I
Disney
think
Channel
I
star.
think
Yeah.
all 4 of those people were in the round, and I had all of them in the wrong spot because I
Oh
couldn't tell you
no.
who sang what song. So I had all 4 answers right. So anyway, going back to that round, one I was most impressive that I pulled and remembered that I think would be the oldest of those is Hilary Duff. So I'm going to say Hilary Duff.
And points to Mr. Conman on that. So yesterday was the first
Excellent.
big single by Hilary Duff.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think that might have been the song they played actually, and I didn't even.
Probably because I think she only had one or two other singles that, had a cup of coffee on the radio. So yesterday
Yeah.
was definitely her big one. Last question in live pub trivia. The defunct WWE brand 205 Live launched as a sub-brand of WWE Raw in 2016. What does the number 205 refer to in this name?
What does the number 205 refer to? That's a good question. What would the number 205 refer to? So, I mean, I don't know if this is right, but the only thing that kind of makes sense is was it all wrestlers who weighed 205 pounds or less? So it's like the maximum weight of the people wrestling?
Yeah,
I'll
you're
go
on
with
the
that.
nose. The cruiserweight
Oh,
level of professional wrestling is considered to be at the 205-pound level or less. 205 Live was their way to showcase their cruiserweights. Yeah, 205 pounds is exactly where the name gets its origin.
I like that question on multiple levels because I know wrestling a little bit, but I certainly am not a huge follower or fan. But I think that that's one of those things where I don't know what else that could be. And so it's one of those where I'd be like, oh, here's an answer. It could be
Right?
right, but I'm not gonna bet a lot if I have to wager on it. But
Oh, yeah, low
yeah,
confidence makes sense kind of answer. Love
yeah.
those. So, one more I think I want to give you. Let's give you a garden path, shall we?
All right, I would love a garden path question because I want people to hear this because
All right.
these are fun questions, and I'm going to get some paper and pen out because I'm going to need to take some notes on this. But go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and paste it in the chat for you if that
Oh,
helps
that's
at
also
all.
good. Yeah,
But I will read it out loud, and I'll probably reread it a second time. You're going to have generally a little bit of time here to go through it. And forgive, I'm going to format this a little bit so it doesn't suck because it's a direct copy paste from the TrivNow platform. And this kind of question really does need line breaks.
sure,
So let me throw those in real quick. Should just take another second, and then we'll get
no
into the
problem.
business at hand. I know you're going to cut this anyway, or you're not, and we're just going to have me riffing. So
Yeah,
sending it.
maybe you never know. So I have a guy, Mike, thank you, Mike, who does the editing for Quizzing in America, and he's the one
Huge
that
shout
does
out
all.
to Mike then.
Yeah, and because I don't know anything about that stuff. And Mike actually also hosts a trivia night for a company called Egghead Trivia up in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, and I'm going to have him on. Believe it or not,
Oh,
you're the
very nice.
Chicago area host that I've had on. I want to have Begatrix on. I
Mhm.
want to have, what do you know? Dan Burns on. I want
Sure.
to have all the companies on. We mentioned Nick Groves. I got to get him on from District
Mhm.
Trivia at some point. But there's so many people out there to talk to and so many different trivia companies
There
that,
really are. Yeah, it's an
if there's anybody
embarrassment of
out there
riches in
listening that,
Chicagoland.
yeah, that I tell you, like I have found there's a company called Pen and Paper Trivia. I'm going to have
Mhm.
them on very soon. I have found so many different trivia companies that just either as one-offs or just small little companies that operate in the Chicagoland area. There's a guy, Quizmaster Kurt, runs a
Mhm.
show once a week, Wednesdays at Geo's. I just met another guy at a bar called Platform 47 who does twice a month. He's called Buffalo Chris, and he runs a trivia show. So
Okay.
no shortage of options in Chicago for playing trivia.
Oh, absolutely not. And the
Yeah.
beautiful thing is we're a large enough market that we don't step on each other's toes.
Yeah,
I don't
absolutely
feel,
not.
and I had that hunger in the first like half of my career where it's, oh, I need to have every show. I need to prove I'm the best. Now,
Sure.
fortunately, in the last few years, I've realized that, hey, there's enough for us all. As long as nobody's
Yeah.
too greedy, everybody can do their thing and we can all coexist in the ecosystem. The folks over at Bag of Tricks are incredibly close friends of mine. Case in
Yeah.
point.
And there's a lot of ways to bake a cake, right?
Hmm.
And there's a lot of delicious types of cakes out there. So, I used to when I started doing this, yeah, I wanted to have all the shows. I thought my trivia was the best trivia and nobody else.
Of
And
course.
I'm like, no, I think I have a good product. I think I write a good game. I think it's a fun game. But I think a lot of people write good, fun games. There's another company called Top Hat Trivia. I'm going
Mhm.
to play their trivia tonight, in fact. So maybe
Yeah,
I'll
it's
have
a
them on.
real nice evolution of your mind space in the industry is when you can get to the point where you realize, hey, yeah, I can be good and others can be good as well, and one doesn't
Yeah.
take away from the other. And that's where that mantra came from, the a rising tide lifts all boats, because collectively we all benefit when pub trivia is done as well as it can be done.
Yeah, absolutely.
So why not be the person who has the ability to lend a hand here or there? You're going to need a hand from time to time, and I believe in karma in that sense. I'm doing this world record attempt. I'm having a really hard time coming up with questions in time. The Trivia Writers Co-op has come together independently to bail me out. Like
Well, that's
a bunch
great.
of them are all submitting a bunch of rounds for me. My very good friend Brian Nash is collating all of it for me, and I'm
Nice.
just
Yeah,
I'm
Brian
taken
Nash is
care
a
of.
good guy.
Oh, absolutely.
It's funny. I want to contribute, but I also want to play the entire thing. So I don't know that
Well,
I
what you
want to
could
contribute.
do is contribute a little bit because if you contribute 10 questions out of over 2,000, do you really have an advantage?
That's true. That's true. I'm gonna send you some
I
questions.
would
Done.
love that from you. I absolutely would.
Yeah.
But speaking of questions, let's get you into mine. Are you ready?
Yeah.
So your garden path I think to end this recording is going to be this. First step, I want the 2012 mobile game that has grossed over $20 billion in lifetime revenue.
Okay.
From there,
2012. Okay.
From there, I want the music act that sang about a type of the second word of the previous answer in a 1988 song that hit #1 on the US mainstream rock chart.
Okay.
After that, I want the term for when a person is most likely to encounter or experience the previous answer.
Okay.
And then I need the word that precedes that previous answer in the name of a 2019 film adapted from the sequel to a 1977 novel. And to put
Okay.
an end on it, I need the full name of the performer whose work since 2023 can be referred to simply as the previous answer.
Okay.
So feel free to take a minute or
So,
two to suss it out, talk it out, anything you want to do. I will certainly
yeah.
walk you through it after the fact.
So we're talking about a 2012 mobile app with 20 billion in revenue. So
Mhm.
now my question is, I think like it's not going to be Angry Birds, right? That seems to be, but what is a 2012 app with 20 billion in revenue and then 1988 mainstream rock hits?
Yeah, that's
So,
part of how the garden path works is you try to come at it
yeah.
from both ends and lock in a single sensible answer. Like, for instance, birds wouldn't make sense here because of the
Yeah.
phrasing of the next step. It's singular instead of plural.
Exactly. So it's like, oh boy, what? So now I'm like music act that's saying about a type of, so like I'm like midnight oil, beds are burning, like that's around that time. I'm trying to think of like what, but like midnight term for when a person is most likely to experience midnight oil. Now that wouldn't make sense. Guns N' Roses, Cheap Trick, In Excess. Trying to think of other like Fabulous Thunderbirds.
You're just reminding me of the radio growing up in my house when I was about 8 years old.
Yeah. Let's see. Word that precedes 30 in the name of a 2019 film based on sequel to a 1977 novel.
And here's actually one of the things that makes writing garden paths as difficult as it is and why it's kind of a developed skill. I don't want you to be able to break in at 30 or 40 points. If I
Yeah.
write it correctly, you have no idea what I'm looking for. If a garden path can be short-circuited, I actively go out of my way to change the wording to make sure that doesn't happen. I play test these all the time with a couple people who understand the concept and really like them. They let me know where like the brick wall is, where, oh, I got to this step easily and then I just couldn't make the next one.
But you know what? I think I did just break in because I'll tell you why. So now I'm going at this backwards. 1977 novel, film adapted from the sequel. So it's got to be a novel with a sequel. So I'm thinking Stephen King. And The Shining, I believe, was around 1977. And he did write a sequel to that called Doctor Sleep, which was made into a film, which I don't know if 2019 is right. But then, term for when a person is most likely to encounter or experience 20, which means that the music act that sang about a type of 10 is probably REM in a 1988 song. And the mobile, I still don't actually know the mobile game is the funny part. Orange Crush, Candy Crush is that? I mean, like, I don't know if that. I mean, but that's an REM song or Stan. But anyway, so then your Doctor Sleep is the sequel to The Shining. So Doctor is the word that precedes 30. So Doctor in the novel, and full name of the performer whose work since 2023 can be referred to simply as 40. So work can be referred to as Doctor. Full name of the performer whose work since 2023. So that I don't know. I am fairly confident that Doctor has to be the 40-point get for this, because that is the word that precedes sleep in 30 in the name. And 2019 film is Doctor Sleep, adapted from the sequel to the 1977 novel The Shining. So that has to, I mean, that just makes too much sense to not be right. And of course, it fits with sleep and REM for 20. So it's funny. I think I have the 20, the 30, and the 40, but not the 10 and not the 50. I'm going to go in. Yeah, I'm going to go in for Doctor for 40. And now I'm
And
very curious.
yeah, you would get
What?
the 40 points there under the old style. Now that there's a new TrivNow platform that gives me more affordability, you would get 30 points because it's 10 points for each correct answer you give out of the five. But yeah,
Okay.
I appreciate that you waited until I talked about how a good garden path can't be short-circuited for you to short-circuit this damn garden path, you monster. So let me.
Well, I mean, listen, of all the things, like mobile app games, not my thing.
Mhm.
1988 songs, okay, I know some of those. 30, you're not shortcutting into that at all. But the
No.
40, you gave enough information there. 2019 film adapted from a 1970. So, that's stuff where I don't think it's easy to short circuit
Oh,
that.
certainly
But
not.
you've got to go, okay, novelists who were big in the 1970s who would have a sequel to a novel, who then had their novels made into movies. I mean, the first most obvious person to think about in that scenario is Stephen King.
Mhm.
And then you think of his books that have sequels, and you still have to know that The Shining and Doctor Sleep is this. I mean, it's not,
Right.
listen,
See, if we had
yeah,
this
but
conversation last week, I would have 100% changed the wording to say 1977 work to avoid that.
yeah,
But we're having
yeah.
this conversation now. So let me walk you through this and walk the listeners through this. So the first step, I wanted the 2012 mobile game that has grossed over $20 billion in lifetime revenue. You actually said it. It's Candy Crush or Candy Crush Saga,
Okay. All right. I mean,
which
if I
means,
had
yeah,
to put that down, I probably would have, because
sure.
Orange Crush. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, because that feeds into music act that sang about a type of crush in a 1988 song, et cetera, et cetera. That is, in fact, REM in the song Orange Crush, which
Oh, you know
means,
what? It says 10-second words. So once I realized that in Orange, so I was like, Orange Crush is not a mobile app game. But then I would have realized type of crush, and I would
yeah,
have, yes,
easier to go forwards than backwards for that reason.
yes, yeah.
Then I needed the term for a person who is most likely to encounter or experience REM, sleep. I had a playtester go with dreaming, but then I realized that the next step doesn't make any sense, so I was okay with it being slightly ambiguous. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, and then just like you said, word that precedes sleep in the name of that film, it's Doctor Sleep. You had that on the nose. So for the full 50, you would have had to give me the full name of the performer whose work since 2023 can be referred to simply as Doctor. That is the eponymous character in the long-standing BBC series Doctor Who. Character is
Oh,
just simply
Lord.
referred to as Doctor or the Doctor. And he is played since 2023 by an amazing actor named Shudigawa.
You know what? Even if I would have figured that out, I would not have been able to remember the performers. I would have known that it's an African American man with a very, like, I think he's from Nigeria, or
Yeah,
I don't know if his
Nigeria,
ancestors are from,
British
but
heritage.
the
Yeah.
the name is very Nigerian, and I would have known, I would have been able to get to that point, but not been able to give you his name. But that would have been one where if I had a teammate and could have got, oh, they're
And
looking for the guy that plays the Doctor in Doctor Who.
that's the other
That's
nice thing
that's
about a garden path is it
yeah.
can bring a team of disparate players in because I always make sure that I write 5 different categories into each one. I don't stay in music. I don't stay in sports. I try
Yeah,
to
you
find a
got
way to break out
music,
of that.
movies, TV, I guess sleep, you could say, is science. You got mobile apps. So you got a lot of different things working in this
Yeah,
question. But
technology or
again,
games, and then music, then we go to science, and then we bounce to film and or literature, and then you've got TV, like
yeah,
you said.
and
Yeah.
so, and again, this is just an example of one, why I wanted to have you on and I wanted to talk to you, is because I think this type of question is a lot of fun, and it's so unique, and it's just an example of kind of the amazing way I think in which your mind works, and
Thank you so
kind of
much for that. I'm
the stuff that, yeah.
honestly honored and humbled that I know people have adopted this as their final questions in a couple spots around the country as well. It it makes me feel like I have contributed to the scene
Oh,
in
you've
this.
contributed way more to the scene than just this. I mean, listen, you are absolutely, I know you said earlier imposter syndrome. Let me assure you that you should have no imposter syndrome. You are one of the most generous and kindest, and one, like I said, one of the most creative and fun trivia hosts and creators out there. And I am lucky to know you and call you a friend. And I'm thankful that you came on to talk to me about this. And I know that, we all have times when we feel that imposter syndrome. I've felt
Hmm.
it too. And even when you get to a point where I've been referred to by people as a high status person in the trivia community, or
A
uh
person that is
you,
known. Yeah.
yeah,
Use the word
and listen,
celebrity in this industry. There's no such thing.
one of the reasons I may stand is I'm a loud guy. I'm a talkative guy. I like to meet new people, and
Hmm.
I like to try and be inclusive and include everybody, and I mean that wholeheartedly.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Yeah.
People of all different walks of life. I know we're living in a pretty divided time to
Very true.
some
Yeah.
degree. And sometimes, we tend
And I mean,
to want to congregate with people who think like
yeah.
us, and I get that.
And to your
You
credit, I
know,
mean, you brought me on, and I'm very, very publicly a Cubs fan. So I appreciate that
yes,
very much. Nothing else unique
which
about me in the space, but Cubs fan.
no, no, not at all. But no, it really is the despite your Cub fandom, there's unfortunately a lot more of you out there than I would care to acknowledge. But but anyway, this has been fun. This might end up being the longest episode of Quizzing in America. I try and shoot for keeping them under an hour. I will see what Mike can edit out of this to get it close to that, but it's going to be long. I hope people enjoy it. I know I did. I always enjoy talking to you, Jay. I always enjoy just, seeing where your mind's at and what you're doing. I look forward to watching you on Jeopardy. And then while you're in the midst of your run, and I'll just keep saying that because I honestly, people, I don't know. I do not know. This is going
My
to
own
drop
kids don't
today.
know. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
I've
Oh,
kept it from
wow. Okay.
everybody except for like
All
the
right.
3 people who went with me.
I assume well, I don't know. Did Christine stay home with the kids, or was she there
No,
with
she
you?
came with me. Very, very good friend Brittany Shaw came with me, and then Dana, the owner of Critical Grind. They were my squad for this.
All right. Well, yeah, I am so. Are you gonna have a watch party?
We are June 4th, 3:30 p.m. Critical Grind Board Game Cafe.
Well, all right. So I'll get to find out where Critical Grind is before the
Mhm.
24-hour marathon. That'll be
Yeah,
fun.
I'm gonna be there a
Uh,
lot next month.
yeah, yeah. So much so that they're gonna be like, Jay, go home. Go home, Jay.
No, I
You're
can't. I
done.
bought into the place. They're stuck with me.
Yeah. Are you a partner now? Are you in there?
Liquid Courage owns 20% of the operating shares of Critical Grind now, as of
That is
unofficially as of November, officially as of a week ago when the paperwork finally got completed.
Well, that is awesome. I'm not as big a gamer as, like board game cafe people. I'm a Scrabble player competitively by nature,
Very
but I
nice.
always enjoy a good board game. So,
Well, I would love to have you
I
down there. I'll put you through
yeah,
your paces, show you around.
yeah.
And really,
Teach me a little
what I
blood on the
needed
clock
was a
tower.
space. Oh, I love Blood on the Clock Tower so much, and we can
Yes.
have a whole other episode about that. But yeah, ultimately, I needed a space where I could be creative, and a venue owner couldn't fire me for ideas that fail. So I bought
Oh,
into a
well, there you
space,
go.
and the owner, Dana, and I have an understanding where, yeah, I'm going to come up with weird ideas, and then I'm just going to do them here and see what sticks.
Yeah, but you know what? A lot of your ideas are going to be great and they're going to stick. And you know what? You can't come up with great ideas unless you come up with some lousy ideas too, because you got
Very
to see
true.
what doesn't work to find out what does work.
Yeah, you don't
And
hit
I
a
think
grand
that's kind
slam
of
first time
important,
at the plate, you know?
Yeah, you know, unless you're
I was gonna say you're gonna give me about 7 people who've done that because
I
I know
think
it's
there's
happened.
Yeah, I'm sure that there was a guy McDonald with the Cardinals in the early 2000s. His first two career at bats were home runs, and
Hmm.
I'm trying to remember if one of them was a grand slam. And I'm trying to remember his first name, but like I don't remember. I should know. Now I'm gonna have to look this up and see if there's anybody whose first career at bat was a home run.
There are a number of
I
them had home runs. In fact, I'm looking right
Well,
now.
first career at bat home run is a lot of people. First career at bat was a grand slam home run. That's what. Are you looking this up? Because I want you
Oh
to
yeah,
look it
no,
up.
I've got it on my phone right now because if you're a
Okay.
trivia host, you have to sound smart, and often you have to Google something in
Yeah.
media res.
So I know it.
Bill Duggleby in 1898, Jeremy Hermida in 2005, Kevin Kuzminoff in '06, and Daniel Nava in 2010.
Okay. Jeremy Hermida and Kevin Kuzman, I should have been able to remember. Those are the ones that I do actually remember now that you say their names. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Hermida's was as a pinch hitter. The other three, it was the first pitch they ever saw in Major League Baseball.
okay. Wow.
Not just
That's
at
pretty
bat,
impressive.
first pitch.
I do know that Adam Wainwright's first career at bat was a home run. I think he's either the only pitcher or one of two. I think Esteban Yan might have also had his
Could be,
first
yeah.
career at bat be a home run. But yeah, he was like, it was a total weird thing for him. Anyway, we
Anyway,
could
yeah.
literally be here. Like I said, this is going to be the longest episode ever of Quizzing in America. I want to again thank Jay for coming on, and I want everybody to watch Jay on Jeopardy on June 2nd. And that
June
is a
4th,
Wednesday.
but thank you.
June 4th. Sorry, June 2nd is when this is going to drop.
Mhm.
So on June 4th, I want you to watch Jay on Jeopardy. And then on June 7th, right, is the
June
Saturday?
7th through the 8th, yeah.
June 7th through the 8th, Critical Grind board game in Shoreville, right?
Shorewood, Illinois.
Yeah.
Basically right off of like Plainfield and Joliet, Illinois. So
Okay.
yeah, I-55
And
and I-80, it's 5 minutes from that
if I
intersection.
can figure out a way, you know what? We're gonna say goodbye. We're gonna cut this
Mhm.
off, and then I'm gonna talk to you about that for
Yeah,
just
for
a couple
sure.
minutes. So don't go anywhere. All right. Thanks, folks, for playing. I still need to find a good way to end these broadcasts because I never know how to just say goodbye. But thank you, everybody, for listening, and happy quizzing wherever you're at. And let me stop the recording.